When the Manhattan Project was taking place, there was a heavy water facility in Norway that was necessary for the Nazis to build an atomic bomb. It was blown up, and so they couldn't build the bomb. So there was a scientist there named Dr. Joseph Rotblat, who went to the head of the project and said, we should stop, because the whole reason for the project was because of the Nazis developing the bomb. They wouldn't stop. They built it, and they used it in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But that scientist, Dr. Rotblat, as a moral statement, walked off the Manhattan Project. And he was instrumental in starting an organization of scientists called Pugwash that had conferences of scientists during the height of the Cold War, scientists from Russia, the Soviet Union, and the United States. And it was instrumental in keeping us safe. That organization, Pugwash, won the Nobel Prize in 1995. My next speaker is its president, but he also was the Undersecretary General of the United Nations, tasked with advancing the cause of disarmament in that body. But he was also the president of the Conference of the Parties to the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, one of the instruments that has kept what would have been a massive proliferation of these weapons constrained to only 9. So it's a great honor to have a person with the direct experience of diplomacy at the highest levels as our next speaker, Ambassador Sergio Duarte.
I have been asked to speak in English, and I will do so, but first in Spanish, allow me to say how happy and full of satisfaction I am at being here. Satisfaction and joy at being for the 4th time in this wonderful part of Mexico, the state of Yucatan, and the beautiful city of Mérida. Thank you for your hospitality.
The previous speakers highlighted the consequences, the dire, the catastrophic consequences of the use of nuclear weapons. I would rather talk to you about what is happening today in the efforts to rid the world of those weapons. And what I have to say is not very heartening. There are several disquieting signs of a dangerous erosion of the structure of bilateral agreements between the major possessors of nuclear weapons. And also in the multilateral forums on disarmament and non-proliferation, no tangible progress has been achieved for over 20 years. Agreed norms in the field of arms control are being rejected and replaced by unilateral decisions. In 2002, the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty was abandoned. Recently, the United States announced its intention to withdraw from the Intermediate Range Nuclear Treaty, the INF, and Russia did the same on the next day. There is a serious risk that the 2010 New START Treaty, which set limitations on nuclear forces of the United States and Russia, serious risk that this treaty will not be renewed when it expires next year, or no, in February 2021, in about 1 year or so. And the standards that were set by the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, although it's not yet formally enforced, those standards have been challenged by unsubstantiated suspicions. And last but not least, the credibility of the Chemical Weapons Convention verification system has been also put into doubt. Another worrisome aspect is the absence of meaningful dialogue between the two major possessors of nuclear weapons. The major nuclear weapon states do not seem interested in engaging with each other in search of understandings that might lead to further progress in arms control and disarmament. It is feared that soon there will be no legally binding bilateral constraints on the two most armed states in the world with regard to the size and their deployment of nuclear weapons. Competition and innovative technological applications under development in some nuclear weapon states to add new capabilities to their military forces amount to a dangerous resumption of the arms race. The lack of progress in the establishment of a zone free of nuclear weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East also creates a climate of mistrust, and observers tend to agree that prospects for a successful outcome of the NPT Review Conference in 2020 seem bleaker than at any time in the past. A recent report of a group of eminent persons convened by the Secretary General of the United Nations concluded that the stalemate over nuclear disarmament is not tenable and that it is not in the interest of any state to allow the foundation of the global nuclear order to crumble. In fact, that group of experts warned, and I quote from the Secretary General, the divide between opposing trends in disarmament has become so stark that states with divergent views have been unable to engage meaningfully with each other on key issues. There's some silver lining to this dark panorama. The only major agreements remaining in the nuclear field are the Non-Proliferation Treaty and the treaties that established the 5 nuclear weapon-free zones that exist, including our own in Latin America, and we should be very proud that we gave the example for that through also the agency and the labor of Ambassador Garcia Robles in the 1960s. The NPT does not seem to be in imminent danger, but there is understandable concern regarding recent proposals and attitudes that risk to procrastinate rather than advance the achievements of the objectives of the NPT. For instance, at the third preparation conference last May for the major conference, which will be next year, major conference of the NPT, it became clear that the approach promoted for decades by the nuclear weapon states, what they call the step-by-step approach, is no longer seen by its proponents as capable of delivering results. And the proposed substitute, proposed replacement to that system, is viewed with skepticism by a large number of states. We have to look at the lessons of the past, as well as mind the signs of the present. There is a clear and present danger of a further deterioration of the global collective peace and security architecture that might also affect the credibility and the stability of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Compliance by all parties with their obligations is essential in this regard. Fortunately, as the previous speaker has brought very eloquently to you, we have negotiated successfully 2 years ago the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. And again, we should be proud as Latin Americans because many countries in Latin America were behind that effort, including Mexico and other countries too. We need to have this treaty ratified by the remaining states. We need 50 ratifications for it to enter into force. And the other treaty that still is waiting ratification is the treaty on the prohibition of nuclear of nuclear essays of nuclear explosions, experimental explosions, the CTBT, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which has not been yet, is not yet into force because 8 states that are nominally discriminated in the treaty have not yet done so. There was the idea that we would present to you and suggest to you priorities in nuclear disarmament. I would venture that one important priority, immediate priority, is the resumption of high-level contacts between the United States and Russia. It's very important that these two weapon states, which possess 95% of all nuclear weapons existing, it is very important that these two states get together to work constructively towards nuclear disarmament. Also, another priority would be the immediate bilateral action to extend the New START treaty, the one that was negotiated by the United States and Russia in 2010, which will expire in 2021 if it's not extended. Then another priority, of course, would be the entry into force of both the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and of the CTBT, of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. And finally, I fully agree, and I think it should be one of the conclusions of our work here, that I would agree that the main goal is the elimination of nuclear weapons and the reduction of the unacceptable risks that they pose. It is clear, and I think we should end our work here by stating very clearly that a nuclear war cannot be won and must never be fought. Thank you.